My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 64. I used to think nothing could break the bond between a father and his only daughter, until the night Emily called from Los Angeles. "Dad, I'm engaged," she said, voice bright. Pride rose in me the way sunlight lifts dust, simple, certain. I asked when I might meet the man who had won her heart. There was a pause, then a soft, hurried, "Soon, Dad, it's complicated." We traded a few small, careful sentences after that. Work, family, travel, reasons that felt like paper shields. Weeks passed. Each invitation to meet him dissolved into another excuse. Then, one evening, she said words that cracked something inside my chest. "Dad, please, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding." I sat very still, the room full of a sudden, private cold. Why would my own daughter forbid me from being part of the most important day of her life? I remembered scraped knees and model houses in the garage, facts that made this silence feel like a betrayal. Tell me where you're watching from, and like this if you've ever felt the moment your child stopped seeing you as family, and started seeing you as an inconvenience. I tried to make sense of it, I really did. Maybe she was nervous, maybe his family had strange traditions. But deep down, I knew that tone in her voice. The hesitation. The quiet editing of her own sentences. Someone was guiding her words. Emily had never hidden things from me before. When her mother died, she was the one who held my hand at the hospital, not the other way around. When I lost my architectural firm after the 2008 collapse, she told me, "We'll build something new, Dad." And we did, not in money, but in spirit. I taught high school drafting. She finished college. We survived. So when she began to speak of her fiancé in vague terms, "He's from a good family, they're very private people," something inside me began to twist. One evening, I asked for his name. She hesitated again, then said, "Andrew Langford." The name meant nothing at first. It rolled off her tongue like a foreign phrase, rehearsed. But the way she said it, careful, weighted, made me uneasy. Then came the invitation. It wasn't a letter, not even a phone call. It arrived as an email, elegant, cold. A digital card with soft music in cursive text, *, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Emily Hayes and Andrew Langford, April 14, 2024. St. Augustine Church, Pasadena. *. No message attached. No, can't wait to see you, Dad. Just coordinates, dates, and silence. I stared at it for a long time. My coffee went cold beside me. The living room clock clicked softly, reminding me that time, unlike love, never hesitates. Something wasn't right. That week, I called her 3 times. The first went to voicemail. The second, she picked up, distracted and defensive. "Dad, please don't make this harder," she said. "Harder? I just want to meet him. I'm your father." "I know. But they're very particular about family matters." "They?" I repeated. She fell silent. Then whispered, "Please, don't come, Dad." And hung up. That was when the ache turned into a decision. I would go to that wedding, not as her father, but as someone invisible. A man in the crowd. In the days that followed, I kept replaying old memories, the first house I designed for her dolls, her graduation speech, the last birthday cake we shared before she moved west. All the small, bright things that built a lifetime of trust. I couldn't believe that trust was gone. No, it had been taken. I booked a motel room 2 miles from St. Augustine Church under a false name. My plan wasn't clear yet. I only knew I had to see the man who had come between us. On the morning of the wedding, I shaved carefully, the way I used to before client meetings. I put on my gray suit, the one I wore to her mother's funeral. I didn't feel grief this time, but something close, a quiet readiness. Pasadena was glowing that day, crisp sunlight, jacarandas blooming along the street, the smell of citrus in the air. It was too beautiful a morning for what I carried inside. I parked my old blue Ford 2 blocks away and walked toward the church. Guests were arriving in sleek black cars, stepping out in silks and tailored suits. I stayed near the fence, among a few onlookers and photographers. Then, I saw her. Emily stepped out of a white limousine, her dress catching the light like water. She looked radiant, fragile, older somehow. I wanted to call out, but my voice locked in my throat. And then I saw him. Tall. Polished. The smile of a man who's used to being admired. I felt an instant unease, not jealousy, but recognition. His face tugged at some buried corner of memory. The sharp jaw, the confident walk. I couldn't place it, but it stirred something dark. I told myself I was imagining it. But the feeling didn't fade. Then, a black Mercedes pulled up beside the church steps. The door opened, and an older man stepped out, silver hair, crisp suit, a smile that looked like it had been sharpened with money. The crowd greeted him with respect, even deference. And in that instant, my breath caught. Richard Langford. 20 years ago, I had built a company with that man, Hayes and Langford Design. I was the architect, he was the businessman. He had promised partnership, fairness, vision. What he delivered was ruin. When the 2008 crash hit, he moved every asset into his own name. I woke up one morning to find my accounts frozen, my reputation shattered. He called it restructuring. I called it betrayal. I lost everything, the firm, my home, and, eventually, my wife. The stress of it broke her heart before her body followed. And now, there he was, walking into my daughter's wedding, shaking hands, laughing, like a ghost that had never paid for what he'd done. I looked back at the groom, and suddenly the resemblance was clear. The jawline. The smile. The name. Andrew Langford. His son. My daughter was marrying into the family that destroyed my life. And she didn't even know it. I stood there until the bells began to ring. People moved past me, murmuring greetings, cameras flashing. The doors of the church closed behind them, sealing my daughter inside that gilded lie. For a long time, I didn't move. Then I whispered to myself, the words coming like an oath I hadn't spoken in years. They took everything once. Not again. That was the moment the father in me quieted, and the architect, the man who could still build and dismantle, began to think. The sun that morning was too bright, almost cruel in its beauty. Pasadena glimmered as though mocking the ache sitting behind my ribs. I stayed in my car after the ceremony began, the windows rolled down just enough to hear the distant organ echoing through the church walls. Every few minutes, a cheer or laugh spilled out from the courtyard, a sound that should have brought joy but instead hollowed me out. I kept seeing his face in my mind. Richard Langford. 20 years ago, I had trusted him like a brother. We had shaken hands on a rooftop overlooking downtown Los Angeles, planning a firm that would change the skyline. He took my sketches, my trust, and eventually, my name. And now his son was holding my daughter's hand before God. I waited until the guests started leaving the church, smiling faces, champagne in hand. The new couple emerged, petals thrown into the air. Emily's laughter rang out for a moment, brief and strained. Then she saw something in the crowd, perhaps me, or perhaps nothing at all, and her expression faltered. Her groom leaned in close, said something that made her nod quickly and smile again. A rehearsed smile. I'd seen the same one on clients who were about to sign bad contracts. When the limousine drove off toward the Langford estate, I followed at a distance. The car turned through iron gates into a mansion I had once helped design. I remembered the blueprints clearly, those long corridors, the vaulted glass hall. It was supposed to be my proudest project, the home that would make Hayes and Langford known. I had poured 6 months of my life into that design before Langford had my name erased from the ownership papers. Now he was hosting his son's wedding there. I parked along the gravel road behind a line of catering vans and delivery trucks. The place buzzed with activity, workers carrying silver trays, florists hurrying in and out. I walked toward the service entrance, moving slowly, confidently. When people are busy, confidence is camouflage. "Sir. You with catering?" a woman in black asked, holding a clipboard. "Yeah," I said, lifting an empty crate I'd taken from a nearby truck. "Robert Hayes. I'm helping with setup." She scanned the list, distracted. "Robert H., right. You're late. Go through the kitchen, they need hands near the east wing." Just like that, I was inside. The mansion smelled of roses and money, that particular blend of floral perfume and polished marble that makes ordinary men feel small. I slipped into a restroom, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. A black vest, white shirt, and name tag that said *Robert H*, it was enough. No one looks at the help twice. I spent the next hour moving through the halls like a ghost, carrying trays, refilling glasses, learning the layout. Everywhere I turned, Langford's world gleamed, crystal chandeliers, portraits of men who'd never known failure. But beneath the surface, I could feel the same sickness that had destroyed me 2 decades ago, greed, dressed in silk. Emily sat at the head table beside her husband, smiling on cue for photographs. Her eyes, though, told a different story. They darted around the room, restless, unsure. I wondered if she already sensed something off, or if she was too deep in the illusion to see it. At the far end of the hall, under a massive chandelier, stood Richard Langford himself. Gray hair now, but the same cold charm. He was speaking to a man I recognized from the news, Howard Bennett, a hedge fund magnate. The kind of man who could turn Langford's next project into gold. I carried a tray past them, pretending to adjust the glasses. I caught fragments of their conversation. "The Horizon Towers project will redefine the market," Langford was saying smoothly. "Luxury, exclusivity, and a guaranteed return. All backed by the Langford Group's legacy." Bennett nodded, skeptical. "Your last few developments faced delays, didn't they?" Langford smiled. "Unfortunate partnerships. This time, the oversight is entirely in-house." I almost laughed. The man hadn't changed. Still building palaces on sand, still selling illusions. But now I had something he didn't, the truth. 3 nights earlier, I'd met with Sam Patel, the only friend who had stayed after my fall. Sam was a quiet man, a financial analyst with an honest spine. When I told him about Langford, he didn't hesitate. We spent the night digging through public filings, contractor reports, and invoices from the Langford Group. It didn't take long to find the rot. Duplicate billing, fake land deeds, and inflated budgets under consulting fees. The same pattern I had once trusted him to fix. We printed everything, a small dossier titled *The Horizon Report. *Hard proof. Enough to ruin him. Now, standing in that glittering hall, I knew exactly what to do with it. I moved through the guests unnoticed. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, the gentle hum of a quartet playing near the marble staircase. When Langford took the microphone to toast family, legacy, and the future, I walked toward the head table with a silver tray of champagne flutes. As I passed Howard Bennett, I stumbled slightly, spilling a few drops near his plate. "My apologies, sir," I said, lowering my head. In that motion, I slid the sealed envelope under his napkin. A subtle move, one I had practiced in my car until my hands stopped shaking. Bennett noticed. He pulled the envelope out as I walked away, curiosity flickering across his face. He opened it, reading quickly at first, then slower, then again. The muscles in his jaw tightened. He looked up, not at me, but at Langford, who was still speaking about honor and lasting partnerships. Within minutes, Bennett whispered something to his assistant and left the table. His phone was already out. Soon, others followed, a ripple of whispers moving through the room. Langford kept smiling, unaware that the tide had already turned. I retreated toward the service hall, my heart steady now. This was not revenge. It was correction. Architecture had taught me that integrity, once cracked, spreads quietly until the whole structure collapses. Tonight, I had simply removed the final support beam. It took 20 minutes. 2 men in suits entered through the main doors, silent and efficient. Federal agents, I recognized the way they moved. They went straight for Langford. For a moment, he stood frozen, disbelief flickering behind his eyes. Then the murmurs began. Cameras lifted. His son rose halfway from his chair, confused. Emily dropped her bouquet, the white petals scattering like snow. They led him out without noise, only the sound of his shoes against marble. He didn't look back. He knew. I waited until the crowd began to stir, until the music stopped completely. Then I removed my vest, folded it neatly, and walked toward my daughter. She stood beside the empty chair where her husband sat, tears brimming but not yet falling. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What did you do?" I looked at her, really looked, the child who once built paper houses with me in the living room, now trembling in a silk gown. "I saved you," I said quietly. "And your name?" For a long time, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward and hugged me, hard, the way she hadn't since she was 12. I held her until the hall emptied, the lights dimming above us. Later that night, back at my small house, she sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, her makeup gone, her hands still shaking. The TV flickered with headlines, * real estate tycoon arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. * I turned the volume down. Justice didn't need to be loud. Emily rested her head on my shoulder. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," I said. "Now you do." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain. My house creaked softly, the way it always had, imperfect but honest. I poured 2 cups of coffee. She took hers without sugar, just like her mother used to. We sat in silence, the kind that finally felt clean. For years I had lived with the ruin Richard Langford left behind. Tonight, the foundation was level again. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something simple, something solid. I had not lost my daughter. I had rebuilt her trust, brick by brick, truth by truth. When dawn came, the first light touched the garden outside. The world, for the first time in a long while, looked steady again. I did not sleep that night. I watched the headlines crawl across the television in silence and listened to my daughter breathe in the next room. At 4 a.m, my phone lit up with an unknown number from downtown Los Angeles. "Mr. Hayes. This is Special Agent Rivera. We'll need a statement. Today." His voice was practical, not triumphant. Justice, when it finally moves, has no appetite for speeches. I agreed to meet at the Wilshire Field office at 9. Emily woke early. Her dress was hanging from the shower rod, a white shape too bright for my narrow hallway. She stood in my kitchen in one of my old sweatshirts, staring at the mug I'd placed in front of her. "What happens now?" she asked. "Truth happens," I said. "Slowly, and in order." She nodded, eyes on the table. "Andrew called twice. I didn't pick up." "You will need to speak to him," I said. "Not today." I left her with a note on the counter, the Wi-Fi password and the name of the neighbor who could bring over groceries, and drove into the city. The streets were empty, washed clean by the night's thin rain. Agent Rivera met me in a conference room with blinds drawn. A second agent, Collins, sat with a tablet, ready. They asked for the beginning. I gave them dates, names, addresses. I described the forged, consulting agreements I had seen in 2008, the contractor who disappeared after signing lien waivers, the night my firm's accounts went to zero. I handed over the printed Horizon report and the backups on a flash drive. Rivera read in silence, his finger tapping the margin as if measuring a wall for plumb. "Who assembled this?" he asked. "Sam Patel," I said. "Financial consultant. He'll testify." Rivera nodded. "We've already made contact with Bennett's office. Your packet lined up with some of their questions." That helped. Helped. A small word, but it cleared a stone I had carried for 20 years. When I finished, Collins slid a form across the table, a formal statement, a line for my signature. I signed, the pen steady in my hand. My name looked smaller than I remembered, but it was mine. When I reached home, Emily was on the couch with a notepad. She had written a list. I saw "Mom" at the top, then crossed out, then written again. "Agent Rivera called," she said. "He asked me to come tomorrow." She paused. I saved the voicemails from Andrew. "Do they need those?" "Yes," I said. "They're part of the record." She swallowed. "He sounds scared, Dad." "Not sorry. Scared." That afternoon, Sam came over with a stack of folders and a tired smile. He hugged Emily gently, like a friend who knows the limits of comfort. "I never liked Langford's math," he said, settling at my table. I ran fresh comparisons on his shell companies. Same handwriting, new letterheads. He laid out the pattern on a sheet of graph paper. No formulas, just lines and arrows. Money walked predictable routes when fear held the leash. I felt a calm I hadn't known since I was 40, the clean air that comes when a problem aligns. At dusk, Andrew appeared at my door. He had no tie, no entourage, just gray eyes and the jittery stillness of a man who has been told he is in the middle of something larger than himself. Emily stood in the doorway, body angled toward me. "Please," he said. 2 minutes. I opened the door wide enough for the three of us to stand apart. "I didn't know," he started. "I mean, I knew my father could be tough. But criminal?" He said Horizon was clean, that the old rumors were slander. He told me to protect the family from outsiders at the wedding. "He meant you." "He meant the truth," I said. "Did you sign the prenup?" He blinked. "Yes. Yesterday morning." "Did you read it?" "Yes. It protects the Langford corporate structure. If we divorce, Emily gets a small settlement, but no stake, no access." It was standard. Emily's face tightened. "You told me it was a formality." "I believed it," he said, then faltered. "I wanted to believe it." "Belief is a poor accountant," I said. "Bring the document tomorrow." "And your emails?" "All of them." He nodded slowly. "I'll cooperate with the agents." "I swear." "Swearing is for churches," I said. "Bring documents." He left with a quiet, "I'm sorry," too light to carry any weight. When the door closed, Emily sagged into the arm of the couch. "Was I blind?" she asked. "No," I said. "You were invited into a room full of mirrors. It's hard to see yourself there." The next weeks moved like careful hands placing bricks. No sudden drama, just steps. Agents interviewed vendors who had been paid twice for services they never performed. A city clerk from San Diego provided copies of the land use forms for Horizon Towers, 2 signatures were traced, the dates misaligned by a week. A junior accountant from the Langford Group sent an email to Rivera with spreadsheets attached and a single line, "I can't be part of this." Emily met with the assistant U.S. attorney in a building on Spring Street. She read her voicemails into the record, surrendered her phone, and handed over the prenup. The attorney, a woman with kind eyes and a strict voice, folded the document carefully. "This would have isolated you from any discovery," she said. I'm glad you didn't sign earlier. I did sign, Emily whispered. The attorney looked up. Then I am glad you didn't file it with the court. We left the building and stood on the steps, watching a bus hiss to a stop across the street. Emily turned her face into the light wind. Respect is not inherited, she said softly, as if trying the words on. No, I said. It's built. Andrew kept his promise. He arrived at the field office with his attorney and a folder thick with emails. In one, his father wrote, * public optics first. Wedding coverage softens the capital call. Bennett will close by Monday. In another, * make sure the Hayes man is kept out. He is unpredictable. Rivera showed me that one across the table without comment. I read it twice, then pushed it back. I felt no heat, no victory. Only the flat relief of seeing a measurement match the drawing. Soon after, the Langford Group released a statement: cooperation, shock, commitment to transparency. Their lawyers filed motions. Reporters called. I did not answer. I spoke only when I had to, and only to the people who wrote things down. One evening, Emily and I drove to Pasadena to collect the small bag she'd left at the estate. The gates were closed now, guarded by a security firm that had no interest in eye contact. Inside, the house was still, the grand hall smelling of cold marble and wilted flowers. We moved quickly. On the way out, Emily paused beneath the vaulted glass I had once drawn as a triumphal corridor. Did you design this? She asked. I did, I said. My name is not on the deed. She slipped her hand into mine. It is now. In my head. A week later, an envelope arrived by certified mail. The sender was a boutique firm that handled architectural credits for legal disputes. Inside was a letter acknowledging my contribution to the original estate design, drawn from a recovered contract draft dated March of 2004. A line had been added to the public record, * conceptual design by Robert Hayes, AIA. * it wasn't money. It was a correction. I called Sam. You did this? I nudged a friend, he said. You earned the rest. Andrew filed for an annulment. His attorney cited fraud affecting the essence of the marriage. Papers moved across desks. The church sent a form. Emily signed where she needed to, quietly, without ceremony. She returned my ring from the rehearsal dinner, a simple gold band I had given her for luck. We kept it in a small dish by the door. The court set a preliminary hearing for Langford in late June. I sat in the gallery with Sam and listened to the charges read. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. False statements. The words were dry, the room colder than it should have been. Langford looked thinner, his hair uncombed, his tie too tight. He did not look for me. I did not look away. The judge set conditions, the gavel tapped once, and the room emptied into the hallway's echo. Outside, Emily stood with a canvas tote over her shoulder, the sun on her face. I'm moving back to Eagle Rock, she said. A sublet near Colorado Boulevard. Small place. Good light. You'll need a table, I said. I have 2 chairs, she said. Bring your coffee. We drove there that afternoon with a borrowed van. The apartment was on the 2nd floor of a building with peeling paint and attentive neighbors. We carried boxes together in the quiet rhythm that used to fill our Sundays. When we finished, I assembled a plywood table on sawhorses and planed the edge until it was smooth beneath my hand. Emily leaned against the doorframe, watching. Dad, she said. Thank you for not shouting. Shouting is demolition, I said. We needed restoration. That night, after she fell asleep on her new couch, I walked the block in the light of the street lamps. The jacarandas were late this year, purple blossoms scattered like careful notes on the asphalt. I breathed in the faint sweetness and felt the strange, generous calm that follows a storm you outlived. In the weeks that came after, I returned to my classroom. Teenagers bent over drafting tablets, learning the logic of load paths and egress routes. I added a new lesson on professional ethics, placed between beam calculations and exit signage. On the whiteboard I wrote 3 sentences. Asterisk love is not a contract. Asterisk. Asterisk family loyalty ends where manipulation begins. Asterisk. Asterisk truth is a straightedge, use it. Asterisk. They copied the words without complaint. A boy in the second row asked if I had learned them the hard way. I smiled and handed him a T-square. On a Saturday in July, Emily came over with a paper bag of groceries and a stack of library books. We cooked eggs and ate on the porch. She told me she had started volunteering at a tenants' rights clinic downtown, intake forms, phone calls, simple guidance. People get lost in paperwork, she said. I can help them find the next line to sign. You're good at that, I said. She looked out at my small garden. The tomatoes were coming in, red and honest. A sparrow landed on the fence, hopped twice, and flew. Do you miss the firm? She asked. I miss drawing without interruption, I said. But I don't miss the rooms I had to sit in to afford it. She nodded. Respect is not inherited, she said again, firmer now. No, I said, lifting my coffee. It's built. When she left, I rinsed the cups and wiped the table. The house settled. The afternoon carried the slow hum of summer through the screens. I opened the back door and stood at the threshold, hand on the frame I had sanded years ago. The wood was smooth, the edge straight. I walked into the yard. The air was warm, carrying the scented weight of earth and basil. I watered the beds until the soil turned dark and quieted. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a radio played an old song at low volume, the lyrics too faint to follow. I didn't need them. I sat down in the shade and listened to the ordinary music of a safe house, pipes, leaves, distant laughter. My daughter's laughter had returned to that register, the unguarded kind that made space for the next hour. The damage was recorded now, not relived, the record is where truth belongs. As the light softened, I thought of the first model house we built together, cardboard walls, a roof that kept sliding until she pressed a finger against the seam and said, "Hold it here, Dad." She was small then, her trust a warm weight in my palm. Today, it felt like that again. I breathed in, out. The day held. The garden held. Dignity, at last, held. And when evening finally came, it came gently, a clear sky, a quiet breeze, and the steady comfort of a life set back on its true foundation. In the end, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting in hallways, no last-minute bargains. Things moved by paper. Letters. Stamps. Signatures. In early September, a certified letter arrived from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The heading was stark. Asterisk United States vs. Richard L. Langford. Asterisk inside was a victim notification form and a hearing date, November 12, 2024. It listed charges, docket number, the courtroom on Spring Street, 9th floor. There was a checkbox if I wished to speak. I didn't. I checked written statement enclosed and slid in 2 pages, dates, what was taken, what it cost, professionally, personally. No adjectives. The next day, another envelope. This one from a law firm in Century City. Asterisk Langford Group, proposed restitution pool. Asterisk the letter offered a first tranche, $2,300,000, to be distributed pro rata among named parties. My name was on page 3, line 8, Robert Hayes, credit adjustment and reputational harm. A figure followed. Not large. Not insulting. I initialed the acceptance with a note, credit correction is of primary importance. Money decays. Records endure. Emily took the morning off work to help me scan everything to PDF. She labeled the files with dates and clear names, asterisk 2024-09-06 USAO PDF asterisk 2024-09-07 restitution pool. PDF. Her handwriting had grown firm again. She used a black pen, precise and calm. 2 weeks later, Andrew asked to meet. We chose a public place, a bench near the Rose Garden in Exposition Park. He arrived on time, carrying a thin folder and a look I recognized, a man setting down weight he should never have carried. I've been cooperating, he said. Full access to emails. A sworn statement. I resigned from the board on August 31st. Good, I said. Bring documents, not promises. He opened the folder. I also brought the revised prenup. I voided it. I signed a waiver. Emily is free of every clause. She met us there, walking slowly, cautious but upright. She read the waiver and folded it once. Thank you, she said. No more and no less. Andrew looked at me. I didn't know about you, he said. Not the specifics. I knew my father had enemies. He called you a bitter man. He said you'd try to make a scene. I'm sorry. You are not your father, I said. But you are responsible for what you did not want to see. Learn to read beyond the signature line. He nodded. He asked if we would attend the sentencing. Emily said yes. I said I would sit in the back. On November 12th, we filed into courtroom 9B. The room was wood and light and the slow breath of air conditioning. Investors, contractors, a few city officials. Sam sat beside me with a notepad he didn't open. The judge read the counts: wire fraud, conspiracy, false statements, then the agreed-upon range. The numbers were simple: months, not years, plus supervised release, plus restitution. It was not the maximal penalty. It was certain. Langford spoke. He said the words people say. Pressure. Mistakes. Blind spots. He mentioned family. He did not say my name. He stared at the table when the judge mentioned Hayes and Langford Design and the March 2004 draft contract. He kept his hands folded, knuckles white. The judge read 5 victim statements by title. One of them was mine. He did not read it aloud. He summarized: professional harm, loss of credit, marital strain, continued service to community. Then he spoke a sentence that set a beam in place inside me: restitution shall include acknowledgement of authorship where contracts support it. It was one line. It was the one I had wanted. Sentence pronounced. Papers gathered. The deputy touched Langford's elbow. He nodded once, as if closing a file in his head. He was led away. In the corridor, Emily stood very still. It's over, she said, not asking. It is recorded, I said. That is how things end and stay ended. We walked out into the bright cold of late morning. A line of schoolchildren filed past the entrance, their voices low, their eyes wide at the metal detector. I held the door for them and thought of my own students, their pencils tapping, their lines slowly learning to meet. In December, the restitution pool dispersed. A wire arrived to my account, a figure that would pay off my truck and the home insurance for a while. The letter that mattered came a week later, from a registry that tracks design credits. It listed the Langford estate under Attribution Amended. The new line was short: asterisk conceptual design by Robert Hayes, AIA. Asterisk I placed the paper on my dining table and stood over it until the ink became part of the wood in front of me. I sent a copy to the high school principal, not as a boast, but as a lesson. He pinned it on the bulletin board outside my room. Proof of work, he said. My students paused by it between classes. Nobody said much. They didn't need to. On New Year's Day, Emily and I drove to the cemetery on Foothill Boulevard with 2 white chrysanthemums. We stood by her mother's stone. The date was simple, April 2010. The ground was damp from the night's drizzle. The city was quiet in that holiday way that makes even freeways behave. Emily traced the inscription with one finger. I wanted her here, she said. At the wedding. She was, I said. She is. We stood a long time. No prayers. Just air, and soil, and a small wind in the eucalyptus. When we left, we took the long road down into Eagle Rock and stopped at a diner that still writes orders on green pads. I had black coffee and eggs. She had tea. We spoke of ordinary things, her clinic's intake forms, a landlord who had lost a deposit on a one-bedroom near Valley Boulevard. I said I would build a simple checklist she could give to tenants. Item 1, take photographs. Item 2, send certified mail. Item 3, keep copies. The architecture of self-defense. In February, I received a thick envelope from the State Licensing Board. They had reviewed a complaint I'd filed in 2009, ignored then, reopened now. Inside was a short letter, we regret the earlier dismissal. Given the federal record, the board recognizes your claims as substantiated. Please accept our correction. Attached was a printed notice to be added to the public file. It did not change a single brick in my house. It changed the air inside it. Andrew moved to a smaller apartment in Glendale. He sent Emily 2 emails over winter, brief, factual, respectful. He was working with a new firm and taking a compliance course 3 nights a week. He did not ask for anything. He wrote one sentence that stayed with me: I learned to mistake polish for character, I will not do that again. People earn their sentences the way they earn their names, over time. I left it there. Spring brought the jacarandas early. My seniors turned in their final projects in mid-April. One boy, Louis, drew a small community center out by the river with a covered porch and a low-slung roof that caught morning light. His model was simple and true. He presented without flourish. I wanted a place where the door is easy, he said. I wrote, door is easy, at the top of his rubric and circled it twice. On April 14th, 1 year from the wedding date, Emily came over with a cake from a bakery on Colorado Boulevard, lemon, not too sweet. We ate outside under the trellis. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph I had not seen in years, the 3 of us in front of my first office, 2005, a hand-painted sign behind us, * Hayes and Langford design. * I looked younger, unlined by loss. My wife's head tipped toward mine. Emily's hair was in a crooked ponytail. Someone had cut the photo to fit a tiny frame and left the edges uneven. I smoothed the corners with my thumb. I found it in a box of Mom's things, she said. I thought you'd want it near your drafting table. I want it near the coffee, I said. That's where the day begins. We set it on the kitchen shelf between the mugs. It looked right there. Answering the morning. That evening, it rained. Not a storm. A steady, patient rain that made the gutters sing. I opened the windows and let the house drink. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, sorting papers for her clinic, leases, notices, receipts. I sharpened pencils at the sink, the shavings curling like small boats. The radio played low. No news. Just a station that respects silence. Before she left, Emily stood by the door and looked at me for a long time. You were gentle when you could have been loud, she said. Loud breaks things, I said. We had enough broken. She nodded. Respect is not inherited. It's built, I said. And maintained. After she drove away, I washed the cups and wiped the counter. I checked the locks, the way I always do. Not fear. Habit. Care. I turned off the lights and left the one by the photograph on. My wife's smile held the room together. It always had. I woke early the next morning. The rain had moved on. The sky over the San Gabriels was pale and clean. I brewed coffee and carried the mug to the back steps. The garden was quiet and shining, the soil dark, the basil awake. A hummingbird paused near the rosemary, then drew a neat line through the air and vanished. The fence was damp. The air smelled like beginning. I sat there a long time, warm mug in my hands, the house breathing around me. Somewhere, a neighbor's child laughed. A truck shifted gears on the boulevard and settled. The world went on, steady, exact. They took everything once. Not again. Truth had returned to the record. Dignity to the room. My daughter's voice to its honest pitch. I sipped my coffee and watched the light move across the wet boards, plank by plank, like a hand smoothing a crease. No triumph. No fanfare. Just the simple piece of a life rebuilt to code. It has been a year since the court doors closed behind Richard Langford for the last time. The world moved on, as it always does, headlines replaced, projects renamed, faces forgotten. But the silence he left behind didn't bother me. Silence is what builders need to hear the structure breathe. I turned 65 that spring. Retirement was mentioned, hinted at by the school board, suggested kindly by colleagues. You've earned rest, Robert, they said. But rest has never meant stillness to me. It means steadiness, a level foundation under a life that no longer shakes. The morning of my birthday, Emily arrived early, holding a thermos and a small, square package wrapped in brown paper. She smiled the way her mother used to when she had kept a secret too long. Coffee first, she said, stepping inside. Then gifts. We sat by the window, the light climbing over the fence like it had permission. She poured the coffee, black and honest, and handed me the box. Inside was a framed certificate, not official, but printed cleanly on good paper. Community Design Award, presented to Robert Hayes, architect and educator, for service, integrity, and mentorship. I looked at her. You made this? She nodded. The school collected donations. They're naming the drafting lab after you. I didn't speak for a moment. The air between us felt full, like a held breath that didn't need release. Your mother would have laughed at that, I said finally. She would have painted a sign herself, Emily said. In crooked letters. We both smiled. Quietly. After breakfast, I drove to the coast. It's a habit I've kept for decades, finding water when I need to think. The Pacific has never once answered a question, but it has always listened. I parked near El Matador and walked down to the sand, shoes in hand. The waves were calm, rolling in long, steady lines, like blueprints drawn by God. I stood there a while, the water lapping over my ankles, and thought about everything that had led me here. The firm. The collapse. The betrayal. The quiet rebuilding. And now, peace. Not triumph, peace. The kind that arrives only when there is nothing left to prove. That evening, Emily came by again. She had been helping one of her clients, a single mother fighting an illegal eviction, and was carrying a box of documents. Can I use your dining table? She asked. Yours has better light. Always, I said. While she worked, I went through my own drawer, the one I used to avoid. Old blueprints, brittle with time, most of them unsigned. I had kept them not for the projects but for the lessons they carried. Angles too proud. Measurements done in haste. Mistakes I could trace with my finger. One sheet stopped me, a pencil sketch of a house I had designed in 1992. A modest, two-story home with a porch wide enough for 2 chairs and a morning paper. Beneath it, in faint graphite, a line I had written then and forgotten, asterisk built for those who will outlive noise. Asterisk. I smiled. It was the first home I had designed for a teacher, a woman named Mrs. Grant, retired, quiet, who told me once, good walls hold good silences. Maybe that's why I kept her drawing. Emily looked up. What's that? A reminder, I said. Of what lasts. She smiled faintly, eyes soft. You always say that. Because it's true. She went back to sorting papers, and I went back to tracing old lines. Outside, the sun lowered into that golden hour that makes even the worn things beautiful: cracked paint, chipped frames, tired hands. 2 weeks later, Sam called. His voice was lighter than I remembered. Robert, you'll want to hear this, he said. Langford's plea appeal was denied. No further motions. Case closed. Good, I said. That file can rest. He hesitated. There's more. The federal receivership is liquidating his company's assets. They're auctioning the Langford estate next month. Public sale. For a moment, I said nothing. I imagined that mansion, the one I had drawn, where my daughter had nearly become part of that family. I pictured it empty, echoing. A hollow monument to pretense. I might drive by, I said. Just to see it end. I figured you would, Sam said. On the day of the auction, the sky was a clear California blue, merciless, spotless. I parked across the street and stayed in my car. The gates stood open for the first time in years. Real estate agents moved in slow choreography with clipboards and quiet confidence. Inside, the glass dome glittered, the marble floors polished, the chandeliers steady in their dustless light. A young couple walked through the courtyard, laughing, pointing at the pool, imagining their future. I watched them a long while. They reminded me of what I once wanted, not wealth, but creation. A place built with intention. When they left, a moving truck rolled in. Workers began taking down portraits, boxing them carefully. I saw Richard Langford's face in one of them, caught mid-laughter beside the governor of some forgotten year. They wrapped the canvas and carried it out like any other object. That was the moment I exhaled. The house no longer belonged to lies. It was just wood, glass, and stone again, raw materials ready to be something new. I started my car and drove away without looking back. In June, Emily's tenant clinic received a small grant. She called me that night, excited, asking if I could design a mobile help booth, something simple, portable, set up outside apartment complexes or bus stops. A table with shade, she said. A place where people can breathe before they talk. I spent the next week sketching. I built the first prototype in my garage out of reclaimed cedar. A canopy with 2 hinged panels, a foldable counter, and a bench. On the front, I carved a single word, clear line. When it was finished, Emily came to see it. She ran her hand over the smooth edge and smiled. It's perfect. No, I said. It's functional. The perfect part comes when people use it. The first time we set it up, outside a strip mall in East L.A., a woman stopped to ask about eviction papers. Emily guided her through the forms while I sat nearby, fixing the angle of the bench. The woman thanked her twice and left lighter. It wasn't much. But it was honest work. That night, we packed up the booth and drove home. On the way, Emily looked out the window and said quietly, "It feels good to build something right." "It always has," I said. Late that summer, I received an invitation from the school district, a ceremony to rename the drafting lab. They asked me to say a few words. I don't like speeches, but I agreed. When the day came, the auditorium smelled of chalk and coffee. Students filled the front rows, restless but respectful. The new sign above the door read, *Robert Hayes Design Studio. I spoke simply. Everything you build, a bridge, a house, a life, begins with a line. If the first line is honest, the rest will follow. If it isn't, no blueprint can save it. Truth is your foundation. Dignity is your roof. Build both, and no storm will take them. The students clapped, some politely, some sincerely. I saw Emily in the back, smiling quietly. Sam was beside her, his eyes shining. When it ended, I stayed alone for a while, touching the doorframe. It felt solid beneath my hand, the way good wood always does when it has earned its place. Now, each morning begins the same. I wake before sunrise, make coffee, and sit on the back porch as the world slowly unfolds. The garden hums with bees. The city yawns awake beyond the hills. And in that still hour, I often think of what remains. Justice isn't loud. Truth doesn't boast. Respect, once rebuilt, doesn't crumble easily. It just stands, quiet, balanced, precise. I've learned that peace is not the absence of memory, it's the absence of distortion. The past doesn't haunt me anymore. It informs me, like an old plan rolled out on a work table, faded but legible. A reminder of what went wrong, and how to build better. The light spreads across the yard, warm and gold. I take another sip of coffee and look toward the open gate. No ghosts. No debts. Only the slow, steady rhythm of a life made level again. Dignity, I've come to realize, is not granted or inherited. It's constructed, line by line, truth by truth. Until even silence feels like a roof that holds. It was early autumn when the first cool winds touched Los Angeles again. The jacarandas had shed their last purple blossoms, and the sidewalks were lined with brittle leaves that crunched softly beneath my shoes. The air smelled faintly of rain and asphalt, that particular scent of a city remembering it once was earth. Life had fallen into rhythm. I taught 3 mornings a week, consulted for a small local firm 2 afternoons, and spent the rest of my time at home or at the community workshop Emily and I had helped create. It wasn't large, just an old storefront near Highland Park that we converted into a design and legal aid space. Half of it was drafting tables and bookshelves, the other half held folding chairs, a printer, and a single coffee machine that always sputtered. Above the door hung a modest sign, hand-painted by a volunteer, the workshop. Design. Dignity. Dialogue. We didn't need more words than that. Most evenings, I'd walk there from my house. The neighborhood changed slowly as the sun went down, workers closing shop fronts, children running ahead of their parents, a guitarist playing outside the taqueria. It reminded me of old towns I used to sketch in Spain during my apprenticeship, places where nothing pretended to be more than it was. Emily would already be inside when I arrived, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, a pen behind her ear. She greeted clients, sometimes landlords, sometimes tenants, with the same patience I once used on blueprints: measure first, cut once, never raise your voice. Watching her work filled me with a quiet awe. There was strength in her restraint, justice in her composure. She'd learned what I could never teach, the calm endurance of truth lived daily. One Thursday evening, just after closing, she said, "Dad, we've been offered a small city grant, enough to expand the workshop. Maybe add a second location near Boyle Heights." "That's good," I said. "Growth is proof of need." She hesitated. "They want us to partner with a developer, an eco-housing initiative. I think you'd like them. The architect leading it, his name's Daniel Holt." The name brushed past me like a harmless breeze. I nodded. "Invite him over. Let me see his plans." When Daniel arrived 2 days later, he was polite, soft-spoken, around 40. He brought blueprints rolled in a weathered tube. "We're trying to design affordable modular units," he explained, spreading the papers across my table. "Recycled materials, solar integration, minimal footprint. But we need the design to feel human, not sterile." I studied his sketches. Clean lines. Modest ambition. A few structural missteps, but the intent was good. "These will breathe," I said. "That matters more than polish." He smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Emily mentioned you're the kind of architect who draws for the people who'll live inside, not the ones who'll invest outside. She exaggerates, I said. No, Emily interrupted. She doesn't. We spent hours revising the layout, adjusting roof angles for light, reworking entry points for airflow. It felt like old times, graphite under the nails, lines that meant something. When we finished, the pages lay across my kitchen table like a soft tide of possibility. Daniel shook my hand firmly. I'd like to keep working with you, he said. We need someone who knows how to build without wasting a soul. It wasn't flattery. It was understanding. I nodded. Weeks turned into months. The project grew, slowly, honestly. Emily handled the community outreach, Daniel and I handled design. The first prototype house went up on a narrow lot near the River. Volunteers came on weekends to paint, install windows, plant small gardens. By spring, 5 families had moved in. Their laughter carried across the street like the sound of a city healing in small, invisible ways. During the ribbon cutting, the mayor gave a short speech, but no one really listened. They were watching the children run between the houses, touching the smooth wood, smelling the fresh paint. Emily leaned against the railing beside me and said quietly, "You built this." "We built this," I corrected. "Together." She looked at me. "You know, Dad, for years I thought you were too calm about what happened. That you should have shouted. Fought harder." "I did fight," I said. "Just not with noise." "I see that now." She paused. "It's strange. After everything, I don't feel bitter anymore." "That's how you know the truth has settled," I said. "It stops needing defense." She smiled. "Daniel said you teach with philosophy." "Architecture is philosophy," I said. "Just written in walls instead of words." That summer, I was invited to lecture at a local college, a short course on ethics in design. I stood in front of 20 students, young and eager, and told them about blueprints, trust, and the weight of signatures. I didn't mention Langford by name, I didn't need to. Every architect eventually meets their own Langford, a person or system that tempts them to trade honesty for ambition. My job was to teach them how not to. After class, one student approached me, shyly. "Mr. Hayes, you said truth is like gravity, it holds the structure. What happens if someone builds without it?" I looked at her and said, "Then the building falls. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday the floor will remember its load." She nodded slowly, and I could see she understood. Autumn came again. The leaves fell, the air cooled. The workshop thrived. Emily began seeing Daniel, quietly, naturally, without the tremors of secrecy or fear. She told me over dinner one night, cautious but clear. "He's different, Dad. He listens." "Then keep talking," I said. "Listening only matters if there's something worth hearing." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that used to live in our house before Loss moved in. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. She had chosen someone from light, not shadow. That was enough. On Thanksgiving, they both came over. We ate simply, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, 2 glasses of wine. Daniel helped me fix the old porch light that had flickered for months. He worked with care, checking every wire twice. When he finished, the bulb glowed steady, warm. He stepped back and said, "There. Now it'll last." Emily smiled at him, then at me. "You two are the same," she said. "Only one of us still has hair," I replied. We laughed quietly. The night passed in comfort. Winter returned with long rains. I spent evenings sketching by the window, a habit I'd thought I'd lost. I drew the houses of my life, the one I built with my wife, the one Emily grew up in, the one that never was, and the ones now standing because of us. I realized something then: architecture is not about walls. It's about trust, in weight, in time, in one another. Langford's mansion was gone now, sold, renamed, stripped of its vanity. But our small houses by the river stood firm, their lights warm against the dark. Sometimes, I drive by them at night. Not to inspect, not to judge. Just to see how the light falls through the windows, soft and true. Each one a quiet proof that dignity, once rebuilt, doesn't fade. It endures, like good wood, like patient love. One evening, Emily and Daniel visited again. They brought soup and photographs, the next phase of their housing project. As we ate, Emily reached across the table and said, "Dad, we're naming the new neighborhood after Mom. Asterisk Grant Square. Asterisk." I put my spoon down. The name filled the air like a gentle chord. "She'd like that," I said. "I know," Emily whispered. Later, when they left, I stepped outside. The sky was deep blue, the moon thin and silver. I walked to the garden and looked over the small tomatoes and rosemary, shining with dew. The world was quiet again, not empty, but balanced. I sat down on the old wooden chair, the one my wife and I had varnished together decades ago, and whispered into the dark, "It's finished." The wind answered softly through the leaves. No ghosts. No anger. Just the sound of things built right. The horizon lightened. Somewhere, a train horn echoed. The day was coming, slow, certain, and honest. And for the first time in years, I felt what every architect hopes to feel when the final beam is set, the tools are down, and the structure stands. Not pride. Not relief. Simply, peace. The morning I turned 66, the sky over the San Gabriel Mountains was a quiet gray, the kind that softens every sound. I woke before dawn, made coffee, and sat on the porch, watching the mist gather above the rooftops. The air smelled faintly of earth and lemons. It reminded me of the years when I was still building, when each morning began with possibility instead of reflection. Emily called just after 7. "Happy birthday, Dad," she said. "Daniel and I are coming over later." No arguments. "I wasn't planning to argue," I said. "Just hoping you'd bring that lemon cake again." She laughed. "Already cooling on the counter." After we hung up, I walked to the back of the house, to the small workshop I'd built from leftover lumber. On the table lay my final project, a scale model for Grant Square's community hall. Simple geometry, open spaces, clear light. It wasn't a grand design, just one that invited people to stay. On the base, in pencil, I'd written, "Asterisk built for voices that deserve to be heard." Asterisk. I wasn't sure I'd ever see it built. But that didn't matter. Some plans exist only to remind us that hope is still a material worth working with. At noon, Emily and Daniel arrived. They carried food, laughter, and a peace that filled the house easily. I watched them set the table together, small gestures, quiet coordination. They didn't need to perform love, it lived between them naturally. My wife had once moved around my kitchen in the same rhythm. Over lunch, Daniel spoke about the next phase of the project, 30 units, a playground, a library. Emily showed me photos on her phone, kids planting trees, families painting fences. "You started this," she said. "No," I said. "You did. I just drew the first line." After we ate, she brought out a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a book, The Architecture of Honesty, printed by a local press. The title page bore my name. It wasn't long, just a collection of essays and reflections I had written over the years, things Emily had found in old folders. "I wanted your students to have it," she said. "And maybe your grandchildren, one day." I looked at her, the way a builder looks at his finished work, with quiet gratitude, not ownership. "It's good," I said. "It's enough." We spent the rest of the day in the garden. Daniel trimmed the old vines, Emily watered the tomatoes, and I sat watching the three of us move in easy silence. The light shifted to gold, and the house, my small, stubborn house, seemed to breathe with us. Before they left, Emily hugged me longer than usual. "You've done everything you needed to do," she said softly. I smiled. "Not everything. But enough." When the gate closed behind them, the quiet returned, not heavy, not lonely. Just the natural quiet that follows when life finds its level again. I went back inside, poured one last cup of coffee, and opened the book to the final page. Emily had added a dedication in her handwriting. Asterisk for my father, who taught me that truth builds higher than pride, and that peace is the final architecture. Asterisk. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I left it on. Through the window, I could see the model of Grant Square catching the last light of the evening, a tiny world of order and care. I traced the edges of its shadow on the table and felt something I hadn't felt in years: completion. There would be other days, other plans, maybe even other storms. But the structure I had built, of love, of honesty, of earned respect, would hold. When darkness settled, I sat quietly and whispered to the room, all lines true. All beams sound. Then I closed my eyes, and let the house, my life's last design, rest around me, balanced, honest, and whole.